Hello, hello, welcome everybody to the live stream, our fourth live stream.
Hey everyone, great to see so many of you here. We're over 100 people. This is amazing.
Crazy stuff. Let us know if the audio and stuff's all good. As always, that one of us isn't yelling, one of us is whispering. Usually me whispering, but you know, tons of people in the chat. It's great to see. We're excited. Well, I'm really excited about these games. We're going from 4 ancient games to 6 next year. Well, kind of next year, year after, which is awesome. And we even have more in the pipeline as well. But let's stick to these ones for now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on at Garphill Games headquarters. Some of the things we can't talk about yet, but there are a few things today that we're going to talk about, which we hope that you're going to be really excited to see. Also, after this video, or like right at the end of this video, we're happy to answer some questions. So feel free to ping some questions, send them our way. If I don't see them, maybe just at Sam McDonald, and I should be able to see them that way.
There's a few moustache comments coming already. Good to see.
Yeah, it's making a resurgence. Hopefully it's a little more subtle this time.
All about the subtlety. We shared an image, I'll bring this up, last week. If I don't screw this up. Technology and all. Boom, that image, yes. We shared that image late last week on the socials. And I was quite taken back by some of the comments. Well, not taken back. I was surprised, and I guess some of the comments were like spot on, some were way off. The question was, can you guess where these next 2 games are set? So I figured we'd start out as we're warming into it, you know, as people are still jumping on. Start out with a few of the comments that came in. Maybe I'll say your name, who knows? We had Seth Hale, I think it's on Facebook. Guessed 1066 Hastings, the Battle of Hastings, or something such, and then way older than 1066 for the other game. Close, definitely way older than 1066 for the second game. Jacob Crumpacker, I don't know. Says England prehistoric. Not quite that old, but getting there. But we'll say both games are on that continent or island or set of islands. TDG, I think it was on Twitter, said Knights Templar and Stone Age. Half right. R. Jones says that hut on the right feels very Iron Age Britain. That was a good key detail that they noticed about the hut, but a bit older than Iron Age, but almost there. We had Saggy Head Board Game Reviews, aka Hannah on Instagram. She said maybe Boudica, Celtic era for the second. I actually had to look that one up. I don't know if you've heard of Boudica, Sam.
No, I haven't.
No, it's quite interesting. She's well, as far as I can tell, it was around, I think, 60 AD. Was a Briton, Celtic Briton, that rose up against the Romans to fight against them. Wasn't successful, but she's a bit of a hero for the Brits, apparently. I'm going to look into that, though. Sounds like a cool story. Josh Capehart just said the past. Both games are set in the past. It's very, very...
Spot on.
Yeah, winner. You win the prize. There's no prize.
Josh.
Jimmy Edmonds says the First Crusade 1098, and a guess at Neolithic age. Pretty close. The second one's being on, but pretty close for the other one. Steve, I don't even know how to pronounce your name, Steve, but Steve McAlton, I think it's his last name, a local Kiwi. He's just having a bit of fun. Says Masterton and Woodville, 2 New Zealand small towns that no one knows about. Not quite ancient enough.
Or State Highway 2.
yeah. Scott Diner, sure I know how to pronounce that. Also guessed at the Battle of Hastings, and obviously Tatooine for the second one. We're not going to. I guess it is ancient when you think about it. Sloth Game Refresher, England and North America. We actually had quite a few that guessed North America for the right game. But this one was the most spot on one. The last one. Very, very broad, so not saying exactly where, but got the timelines perfectly. Was Michael Strange, says medieval and Stone Age.
Hey Shem, we've got a few late entries here. Do you mind if I read them out?
Go for
We've got one that's ancient Montana and one
it.
that's modern Montana.
I can
So
guess
are
who said
they
those.
close?
Very close. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, very close to Montana. Um, cool. All right. So we're gonna announce. Let's just get into it, I guess. The first game. So the first game we've already hinted quite a bit at it. The medieval one that you can see in that picture. This is the mechanical sequel to Hadrian's Wall, designed by our good friend Bobby Hill. It's a 1 to 4 player flip and fill. Shares a lot of DNA with Hadrian's Wall, while being its own beast as well. It has like a 3D castle that you can build. Each player can build. It's deeper and I think more replayable and more crunchy than Hadrian's Wall. Just a more refined product as well. So, are you ready? Are you ready? So yeah, maybe we'll just linger a bit longer, eh? Bobby actually, yeah, he came to this game, I guess, a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I was all on, except that it's technically not ancient. This was the big dilemma. It was like, well, ancient stops at the fall of Rome, but Bobby being Bobby, and the fact that this is going to be an amazing game regardless, and the success of Hadrian's Wall, I said, like, let's just break that rule. Ancient just means old in this context, so we had to do it. We couldn't say no to this game. It's just so good. So here it is. The first game to reveal is The Anarchy. Look at that cover. Soak it in.
Can we just appreciate Sam Phillips' art and craft? The way that he has, I don't know, he's always been amazing, but look at this level that he's got to now. Isn't it incredible? Come on, guys, send some hearts, send some likes in the chat. I can see some of them coming through.
I think when we were talking about the cover, I said to my brother, who did the obviously Sam Phillips, my older brother, does the artwork. I said to him, like, I think for this cover, Bobby is really going to want a big castle battle scene. And Sam's like, oh man, this is going to be a big job. There's all the little details, all like so many characters, so many angles and things going on. But I think he's nailed it. There's just so much to look at and just so striking. I love like the reddish purple tones as well across the banner and in the sky and everything. So yeah, so good. Did you want to read out that little flavor text, Sam, so people can tell
Yeah,
what the
okay,
game's
guys. We got story time with Sam now.
about? Ooh, exciting.
So listen up. And also loving all the emojis that you're spamming. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. It's good fun. At the end of 1135, Henry I, King of England, died unexpectedly, leaving no male heir to reign in his stead. Henry's daughter, Empress Matilda, believed she should rule by succession. However, the late king's favourite nephew, Stephen de Blois, was quicker to the throne, and with the help of his brother, the Bishop of Winchester, was crowned king. Those loyal to the Empress were enraged by Stephen's coronation and would not accept him as their new ruler. Over the next 18 years, England saw a breakdown in law and order as civil war spread throughout the country. This conflict came to be known as the Anarchy.
Dun,
In the Anarchy, players take on the role of English nobles loyal to King Stephen. Over 5 rounds, players must build their domain, defend their castle from attacks by the approaching Angevin armies, and storm strongholds loyal to Matilda with their own crafted siege weapons. The player who can accumulate the most bravery, loyalty, influence, and might, whilst avoiding discontent, will prove to King Stephen they are his most loyal ally, granting them his largest earldom.
We've already got requests for Sam to do bedtime stories popping up. So this is the launch of Sam's new audiobooks that he's going to start reading board game intros. It's a new thing. So yeah, 11. What was it? I already forgot. 11 something or other. 11:35.
Yeah, can I just talk? I just want to talk a little bit about the gameplay because I've only been a playtester of this game. But firstly, I need to say that Bobby Hill is a madman. He's an absolute madman. I mean, Hadrian's Wall already was so crunchy. There was a lot going on with Hadrian's Wall, and he's just like, what if we just level it up? I mean, that's the next natural step, right? Let's level it up. I like to call Hadrian's Wall a game where your engine is almost pre-built. There's a few ways to build your engine, but most of the time you're just kind of getting to drive in this car this engine's already been built for you with all of this combo-tastic fun. The combo-tastic fun is still here in the Anarchy, but players actually get to decide also how they want to build their engine. There's a lot more customization with sort of siege weapons that you opt into and different types of defenses that you opt into. So I think it's even more replayable and it's an even better game, if I can say so.
Yeah, and what Bobby was aiming for, he said he didn't want to make a game that people played and thought, Hadrian's Wall's better, you know. He knew he had to kind of one-up Hadrian's Wall, because why would you, like, do a sequel that's not as good as the first? I mean, that's a hard ask for, like, so many movies. The sequel's always a flop. But honestly, he's knocked this one out of the park, and this one comes with a solo campaign out of the box, 20 levels, and there may be more levels being added as a Kickstarter thing. Bobby's very keen to do another, I think it's 6 to 8 chapters from the other point of view, so playing as Empress Matilda's forces. But he's just gone above and beyond for this campaign. It's not just like the Hadrian's Wall one. It's a very similar structure, where it's kind of like, these are your setup changes, here's your goals, here's like a bonus you can achieve to carry on to the next game. But there's not each, but maybe half of the chapters bring in unique cards in a similar way that Legacy of You brings in unique cards throughout the campaign. So there's a lot more going on than the Hadrian's Wall solo campaign, which was just a free thing that Bobby did back in COVID days. But yeah, this is out of the box. This is going to be like an amazing solo experience. So
just a few questions to answer here, just to cover over stuff you've already said. But no, this isn't only a solo game. It's 1 to 4 players. But yes, the solo campaign is included in the box. Will Anarchy have more interaction, or is it like Hadrian's Wall? There is some interaction in the game, but I'd say it is more like Hadrian's Wall. And I think that's for good reason. The amount of combos and fun you get per minute of gameplay is at its highest when the game is low interaction. The more interaction you add, the more downtime you have to add, and that's just not what this game is going for. Would you say that's right, Shem?
Yeah, it has more meaningful interaction, but it's very similar level. As far as similarities to Hadrian's Wall, it has a system where you can help someone else by flipping over a face down card to help them. So that's more akin to like what you might see in Hadrian's Wall. But the added interaction is really in the very start of each round. You're going to be drafting a setup card. So rather than just getting a random card given to you, or in Hadrian's Wall you draw 2 and keep 1, this one you're drafting from a set of player count per round, and based on how far along you've been attacking the castle. So each round you're kind of encouraged to attack one of Matilda's castles. If you're doing that, then you're going to be more ahead in turn order, meaning that you'll get earlier picks on these cards. If you're not doing that, you're going to fall behind and you'll just be given the last card. So there is this a bit more of a drafting tension to the interaction, but the actual like heads down stuff is the priority, like in Hadrian's Wall. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. I wonder if we should move on to the next one.
Maybe. So the next game is one that I have designed. I still design games now and then. Know a little about the publishing. This game actually came, I was thinking about it earlier today. This game, I think I designed it because we had a design retreat coming up, from memory anyway. We now and then we do these design retreats in New Zealand with a bunch, 20 or 30 designers. Which has already got it in there. I'm not saying that, Royce. So I wanted to make a new game for that because I didn't want to bring something that's pretty much already tested. I wanted to bring something fresh. And I started looking into ancient themes that would inspire me, and found this cool story of these people in northern Scotland. Yes, Neolithic northern Scotland, which had this really intriguing thing about it, and that was that these the way they built their homes was very intriguing, and very unique, and something I'd never heard of before. But of course, as I started showing people the game, they're like, "Oh, I know about that place." So this is the thing, people know about it, and you can actually. One of the cool things is this game is set 5,000 years ago. you can still go to the site today and see it and see what they created 5,000 years ago. So it's insane that this stuff still exists. Obviously, it's been like weathered and was buried below ground for a long time, but yeah, it's just incredible. All right, so the next game is designed by me. It's a 1 to 4 player game, 45 to 60 minutes, very resource heavy style game, and more on that kind of solo vibe, much like the Anarchy and stuff, but not quite that heavy. And it is Skara Brae. So this is set, yeah, like I said, 5,000 years ago, Neolithic, in the Orkney Islands. There's this little town, or not town, little settlement called Skara Brae, where they basically dug. Well, I'll just read the story. I'll read the story. That'll sell it all, rather than me rambling. All right. Around 5,000 years ago, I can't read stories like Sam does, but I'll do my best. Around 5,000 years ago, a resilient group of farmers and hunters built a thriving community on the Orkney Islands of northern Scotland. Rather than discarding their empty shells, broken tools, bones, and other waste, they used them to form large mounds of earth over hundreds of years. Later generations dug into these midden piles to create a series of rooms and tunnels to shelter from the harsh winds and cold winter months. The aim of Skara Brae is to gather various resources in order to feed, clothe, and shelter the growing number of settlers. Players will take turns drafting cards and using their workers to furnish, cook, craft, clean, and trade. At the end of each round, players will need to provide for their settlers and will likely create more midden that needs to be cleaned up. After 4 rounds, the player with the most victory points will be declared the winner, as we love, because we love Eurogames. That's how we do things.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is Skara Brae. It's more in a similar kind of space to, say, Legacy of You or the Shipwrights Redux. Probably shares a very similar DNA to those two games, actually, because these games all kind of got designed at a similar time for me, where I was like basically trying to redesign Shipwrights. So I had this kind of system in my mind and in my heart, as they say. But yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about this one.
Well, I wonder if you would say what's kind of unique about this game.
Yeah, what is unique about it? Well, I guess it's got a funny story to the game a bit, in a way. When I first started making the game, I was using a card system for gathering resources and spending resources. So anytime you'd gain a resource, you'd take a new card and place it in front of you. And if you spent that resource, you'd flip it over and it would go face down. And you could place other resources on top of the face down cards. And it was fun. You do this clean action where you'd sort of tidy up all your cards and push them together and then cover them. And we liked it and it was fun, but it was insane. Like I got to the point where I was like, I need about 1,600 cards to make this game function. And I could just hear the reviewers coming back going, this game is a nightmare to set up, a nightmare to clean up. Even though it was kind of fun. I had one final play of that version and I was like, this is just so messy. There's just cards everywhere across the table. And so I had to kind of rethink how the system would work. We've ended up going to a system that uses like lots of different wooden resources. So if you love meeples and custom meeples, this will be your jam. But you are gathering resources to then take various actions. Very Euro-esque. But I guess what is the unique stuff is the draft, which is really Sam's idea. There's 4 rounds. Each round there's sort of 3 turns, and on each turn you're either going to pass or you're going to take a card that's in front of you, and you can see the 3 sets of cards ahead of time. So if you pass early, you know you're going to get first dibs on the next set of cards. But each round you're basically going to be taking a card, which is going to activate, often getting resources or doing something else, and then you'll be using your worker or workers to take actions simultaneously, basically. At the end of each round, you have to feed all your settlers, which are one main type of card that you'll be drafting. And if you can't, then they are no more. But you're also taking other cards as well. And then at the end, if you gain too many resources, it kind of pushes out this track on your player board where you gather your resources. And the further out you push that track, the more waste you create at the end of the round. So you kind of have to manage not just the resources you're getting, but how much you're getting as well. And at the end of the 3 turns of the round, you feed, you clean, you produce waste, and then jump to the next round. But each round you're getting 1 more worker. So by round 4, for the last 3 turns, you're taking a card and then placing all 4 of your workers simultaneously taking actions. So very crunchy, chainy resource management game, but very fast, and I think it's medium weight, I guess. It's not super light.
Yeah. So lots of people asking about the weight of this game. I would say if you've played Shipwrights Redux on Tabletop Simulator, it's a similar weight to that. It's a little bit less heavy than, say, a Hadrian's Wall. But there's still a lot going on, which is fun. I think for me, it gives one of these feelings like we have in Architects. It doesn't actually feel like Architects, but there's a feeling in Architects when you're really rolling in one type of resources, when you keep spamming the same spot, and you've got this massive feeling of plenty, but then you might not have much of another resource. One of the puzzles is trying to balance. You can get a lot of one, a specific type, or you can get not much of each of them. So that's a really cool tension. And the other thing to point out, which is totally my jam, is asymmetry. There's a few different characters and asymmetries to explore without giving too much away, but that's always a fun thing to put into a game.
I always forget what's in the game when I start talking about it. But yeah, there's asymmetry. The system that Sam's talking about with the architects kind of thing is when you take a settler who works on the shore, maybe. When you first place them, they'll give you like 1 resource. When you place your second of that type, you get 2 resources, and then 3, and so on. So, like architects, you can start spamming sort of one area of gathering, but then that's going to kind of limit you in other areas. So, yeah, it's a good puzzle kind of game. All right, so that's the 2 big games. They'll probably be on Kickstarter, hopefully around August next year. We'll see how we go with artwork and stuff, but the Anarchy is pretty much done with artwork. Sam just got a few little cards to finish off, and then he's going to dive into Scar of Bray, which it's not a massive game art-wise. So there are a few characters, but it's mostly very heavy on the wooden resources and stuff. But yeah. So we'll keep you posted early next year. We already are doing a bit of online testing for these games, not openly, but if you're very interested, we can potentially teach you some of these games early. But otherwise, we'll open them up more publicly sort of early next year for testing. We will need some testing for the Anarchy campaign, for sure, because it's a beast.
And so the place to be really for all things Garphill, if you want a sneak peek, if you want to do testing earlier, is our Discord server. Just a little plug. You can find that via garphill.com, and you can see the little Discord face emoji. Click on that, and that will send you a link through to our Discord server. We might even have sneak peeks of artwork and stuff coming early next year, because people have asked, can we see a picture of the board? Not yet, but if you were to see a sneak peek, the place you would see that first would be on our Discord server.
Cool. All right. That is everything Ancient Anthology, I think. We do have another game signed for this line, but we aren't ready to announce it yet. But I will say that it's actually a reprint of an older game that Sam and I have been developing with the designer. So it's going to take an older game that came out 10 plus years ago that we want to give new life and add new modern touches to. So look out for news on that one in the future as well. And we'll have more games in this line. I just love these themes. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the next game we want to talk through is Storm Raiders Balloonk. So this, if you're not unaware, I've been talking about it for a while now, but aside from Garphill Games, I'm also involved in Arcus Studios, which is another local publishing company in New Zealand, with Nicola and Paul, who are both ex-Weta Workshop friends that I met while I was working there a little bit on Giant Killer Robots, their heavy hitters game. So I'm now been working with Paul and Nicola for over a year, I think it is, with Arcus. They published Shelfie Stacker, which was one of my designs, and we just released Dreadful Meadows by Lucas Adam. I always forget what he puts on the box. Lucas Adam, I think he puts on the box. And Storm Raiders is our next game that's coming out. So this is my design. Now that I clear my throat, but this is my design that has been in the works for a long, long time. Excuse me. So Paul approached me about this game. I think it must be like 7 years ago, a long time ago, and he's had this IP in mind, this Atlantean sort of almost Indiana Jones, Mad Max kind of vibe, and he wanted me to make a game for him in this world. We had no idea about how that would be published. It would go through Weta or through Garphill or something else at the time. But I set out to make this game, and on a long story short, I basically redesigned it like 4 or 5 times over the 7 years because it just was never really clicking for what we wanted the game to feel like. But we came back to a core concept early on, which was dice drafting, and using dice to then move around the map. So this game is going to be on Kickstarter on January 24th. We were hoping to be a bit earlier, like maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, but we had to push it out just because to get things ready, get reviewer copies ready and stuff. Which I think all the review copies have arrived now, which is exciting. So you'll start seeing some content about this showing up in the coming weeks, months. But it's a 1 to 4 player game. Takes about 60 minutes. This is much more in the similar weight to say Raiders or Explorers. It's not a heavy game. It's not a long game. But it's quite crunchy. There's a lot going on. There's lots of different abilities and powers that you have on different vehicles that you can use in the game, and that's kind of where the crunch is, and then the replayability is. So, the art and world building is done by Paul Tobin and Dane Madgwick, who obviously Paul's one of my business partners. Dane's an amazing artist who's been involved in this project as well. So let's show you some more, I suppose. I think I have one lined up. Boom, there we go. So this is the top down of the game in action. As you can see, there's this kind of big map of Atlantis, and I'll just, I'll read out the intro. Story time again.
Let's do it.
All right, sit back, relax, get your hot chocolate ready. All right, for thousands of years, all we have known is the Rift Storm. It destroyed our empire, sundered our land, and severed us from the old world we once ruled. Sheltered within the eye of the storm, we fought to survive, imprisoned in our last remaining city, desperately clinging to life. As the ages passed, the eye slowly grew in size, enabling exploration beyond the city and a startling discovery. The storm was still connected to the old world, its erratic rift capturing hapless Atlantic crossings and wrecking them upon Atlantis' broken shores. The age of the Storm Raider was born, brave souls who for fame and fortune would dare the might of the Riftstorm to save these precious offerings and bring hope to our dying world. Epic. So we are in this lost world of Atlantis, and it's the way that Paul's described to me, it's kind of like our world, but what is our world? But the technology of Atlantis is kind of like 30 or 40 years behind us. So lots of this technology feels very diesel punk, very like rough around the edges, but like, lots of motors and things like that. The other game that I played, well, it reminds me a bit of the world itself. It reminds me of the Mad Max video game, which I played a couple of years back. The idea of like you always got different vehicles you can jump into and drive around and stuff. So the game is played over 6 rounds. Each round you're drafting 2 dice, going around the table twice. And you're using those dice to either on a vehicle to travel across the landscape, or you're going to use it to rest, which is basically refreshing your board and gaining some other stuff. And at the end of each round, the storm, which is you can kind of see in the right-hand side over there, looks a bit like a rose, a dark blue rose. That's going to move around and drop off more plunder or salvage items that you can pick up. And if you get hit by the storm, that's not good for you. All your vehicles take damage, and so you're kind of moving around, picking up stuff, dropping it off, while trying to manage your damage, trying to be close to the storm but not in the storm. There's some things with the storm where the player who takes the last die may choose which direction it goes based on the color of the die. So there's a good amount of sort of reading the table, seeing what others want, like that kind of interaction. You can't just kind of keep your head down and not notice what other players are doing. But you each have, during setup, you set up your player board. You have the unique Storm Raider in the middle, the character. You'll have your own trike, your own plane, and your own sub. And these are all interchangeable. So there's, I think, 8 of each in the base game. So you can have any kind of combination you want. And they all have various powers that feed into each other and stuff. What you're basically trying to do is go to these various wreck sites, which look like they're swirling things on the map, pick up resources that you put on your player board. And as you do that, the icon inside that little swirling symbol shows you kind of one of your dials on the top of your playboard that you turn up. That's going to determine how many points you get for a certain thing at the end of the game. So either for how many crew you have, how many mods you have, or how many medals you have. And you're going to be dropping off some of those resources you pick up to the stormholds, which are the big circular cards you see on the main board. And these are pretty much pick up a deliver kind of style where you drop off a certain type. You'll get some points from those, and you get some other resources and items as you do that. And then, yeah, it's just a very quick game, but these crunchy decisions about exactly where I go, what I pick up, where I drop it off, the timing of it, when do I rest, and trying to maximize all your vehicles and stuff. Yeah. Anything to add?
I just got to point out, Ham Pants is alive, everyone. Can we all say hi to Ham Pants in the chat? He's an absolute legend.
Good to see you.
No, one other thing on Storm Raiders, actually, just to promote Stella, who's here in the chat right now, we've actually got a live play available that you could watch today, right after this, if you want to learn more about Storm Raiders, on Meeple University's YouTube channel. So there's a play with Shem, Tarrant, and I on Tabletop Simulator, and that should give you a really good grasp for the game.
Yeah, and this is much more accessible than, say, most of our more recent medieval games. So this is like, it's fairly easy to teach, quick to get into, and quite replayable because your setup's going to change every time, and how you attack the game is very different. A lot of fun. This has been like a real joy to create. So, it took a long time, which was not the joy, but like seeing it finally come into part and things plug in and it'll work really well. It's good fun type game.
I think I remember playtesting a very early version of this when we were working on Architects.
Yeah,
very early.
Probably, yeah. It's gone through so many changes. It had a time track. It had dice rolling. It had like for action taking. It had so many different things going on, and yeah, it's that part of it has been like almost frustrating because you kind of like it just won't work, But to see it finally come together after that long is so good. So it's been like a more unique journey for me from a game design point of view than most other games. Most games we kind of like we workshop ideas and then quickly throw them out, and then we finally land on something which then sticks for the rest of the game. I did that like 4 or 5 times for this game. So
yeah,
like, but all those
are very stubborn.
Yeah, exactly.
They have a mind of their own.
Every like little thing I did kind of ended up helping this final version. So, but yeah, it looks amazing on the table as well. So, yeah, and the box looks incredible. All right, so keep an eye out for that one on Kickstarter next month, January 24th, maybe 23rd if you're in North America. But yeah, follow Arcus on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff for more information, and keep an eye out for videos dropping pretty soon, I hope. Cool. All right, that's that. Next one. It's time to talk about the next game that's going to be on Kickstarter for us. You may have heard of it. Inventors of the South Tigris. This has been a long time coming as well for us. Our first ever live stream like this was to announce the 3 South games, which I think from memory it was like roughly this time 2 years ago. No, it'd be more than that. It'd be over that 3 years ago. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a while ago. I think it was 20. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, we announced the Something of the South Something ×3 video that we did. And in that video, we had already designed Scholars. It still had a few tweaks after that fact. Wayfarers was close to final as well, I think. Or at least we knew we had a game in the works there. Inventors, we had ideas, but everything we talk about in that video did not make the game. We had a complete different game in mind back then. I think we went through 3 or 4 kind of ideas that we just quickly trashed for this game, I think.
Yeah, again, speaking of stubborn games, this one and Viscounts, these were very stubborn games that we really had to fight with in order to realize what they wanted to become.
But that's usually like a 3 or 4 month process of like, try this, it doesn't work, try this, doesn't work, and then eventually we find something that kind of clicks. I think Inventors, the biggest puzzle was figuring out the resource system.
Yeah.
But I guess before we jump into that, maybe Sam wants to talk about theming and the general idea of the game.
So we have already announced this game before, as Shem has said, and we have already talked about the theme. But for those of you who have missed that, we'll talk about this again. And then maybe we'll explain a little bit more that's going on mechanically if you're interested. And also after this, just remember just to send through any questions that you've got. We're happy to answer any of your questions for 10, 15 minutes or so afterwards. So feel free to put them in the chat. But yeah, Inventors of the South Tigris. This is the third in the trilogy set in medieval Baghdad, and they're all at a really, really similar time frame. So there was this. There were three brothers called the Banu Musa brothers, and they were actually very heavily involved in the translation movement, which is what the theme of scholars is. Um, but these people had picked up so much knowledge and understanding, but they also wanted to tinker away with their hands and wanted to invent all of these weird and wacky contraptions and devices. And this is what they did. They published this book called the Book of Ingenious Devices. That's the English title, or 1001 Ingenious Devices. And they made all sorts of novel and interesting things. Some things were very useful, some things weren't useful, but they were interesting. Like they had self-trimming candles, and they had little automatons that would play music just by pouring water into them. So they made all sorts of crazy things. And so we're really leaning into the theme with this game. So players are inventors who are inventing devices. And we've got an interesting system where there's a little board which is the size of 2 cards, and the left half of that board is almost like a printed card with an adjective there. So it might say reciprocating, or it might say miniature, or it might say sharp, or something like that. And then players are going to be putting a card on the right hand half of that board to define what that invention is. So we might have a mechanical puzzle, for example. That's just a little reference for one of our playtesters, Levi, there. So players will invent devices, and then players will build these devices and test them and publish them. And so there's all of these different steps of the process. Very similar to what we explored with Scholars, how we've got this shared infrastructure and players can lean fully into just one of those avenues, or they could see one project through to completion by doing every step in the process, and all sorts of combinations of those things in between. So it's a very interactive game. It's very much following up from Scholars in those levels of interaction, and also it is a heavy game. And I think we're going to have to talk about the elephant in the room at some point, but it's a very heavy game. Yeah, Shem, anything to add there?
I was just thinking, should we show a picture of the game, maybe? We've
Yeah,
only ever shown a few little snapshots on our Discord, and they're always like a very cropped picture of what the game looks like on the table. But we are ready to show you. This is an amazing render done by Nicola, one of my partners at Arcus. She's an amazing renderer, if that's a name of a profession, I'm not sure. Here it is, ready. So here's a shot of a 4-player game in progress. Take it in, take it in.
Yeah, so, once again, kind of like what we did with the West Kingdom trilogy, we tried to make each game have a unique board presence and shape. So Paladins had this really long board, Architects had the kind of standard size board, and then Viscounts, you've got that decagonal map. And similar with this, we've got quite a different table presence with Wayfarers, and Scholars is more traditional, big board. And then this game kind of is really interesting with the device boards you can see there. Really big player boards, kind of like Paladin size. So lots of crunchy stuff to do on your own board. And a kind of a narrower main board there.
Yeah, so Sam talked about earlier about the devices. So you can see these boards in the middle. These are the device boards. So you can see that one that's at the very bottom left. There's a board but no card on top. So the right-hand side looks mostly blank. So that's waiting to be invented. Whereas the one above that, you can see it's like a big clock on a table. That has been invented, but has been waiting to be built. The idea is there, but no one's built it. In the next column over, you can see there's a bunch of dice on some of those 3 boards there in the column. These have been built and have started to be tested. Testing is indicated by the dice on the boards. And then once people are ready to publish, they don't need all 3 dice on there. They could have no dice on there. But once someone wants to publish it, they then do so and move it into the next column. So those 6 boards on the right-hand side, they've all been published, and they will continue to be tested, potentially over the course of the game. But there's these 4 states, or 3 states really, I guess. There's the invent, build, and publish that these devices can be in. So there's a lot of shared space going on in that area. players competing for these sorts of things. The big main board that you see across the top houses all the influence systems that we have in the game. So you've got the 3 guilds that you're used to with Wayfarers and Scholars already. That ties very tightly to worker placement in this game. So most of the worker placement actions in this game require you to spend influence. That's our main way of spending it in the game. There's a couple of actions that are kind of like just boring actions where you can place your workers for little actions if you want, but the majority of them are spending your influence. And then there's obviously end-game reasons to hold on to your influence as well. We have these tents along the top that you see, and also on the player boards below. These kind of track the round. So when you are kind of finished for the round, think of paladins, like you've done your actions, you think that's about all I can do. You might use your last action to place your tent. Well, not necessarily last action, but you'll take an action to place your tent. At that point, you're kind of saying, I'm done. I'm not going to use any more of my actions out on the main board, not going to place any more workers, but I might still stick around my player board to keep going. So if it comes back to you after you've placed your tent, you then have a new set of actions you could take. So you're not out of the round entirely. You're kind of still in the game. But once the 4th player in a 4-player game places their tent for the round ends straight away. So there's this tension around, like, when do you place your tent? Do you want to get the first dibs on the best action tile that tent will give you, the immediate benefit of placing your tent? Because there's 5 places you could go. But if you go too early, maybe you miss out on taking that little action you wanted to keep back on your player board for later. There's also this river along the bottom you see on the main board, which is where you're moving your ships. This ties into the testing mechanism. It brings in research with ongoing and immediate and tent placement abilities, all the engine building fun that we love in games. And yeah, there's all that, lots of stuff going on in this game, obviously. Did you want to talk about the player board and the dice and the craftsman, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. There's heaps to talk about, but I want to talk just a little bit more about that tent mechanic, because that was a really intentional design decision that I want to see in more games. So a lot of these games have this trope where a player will pass and then they're done for the round, and then they might be waiting, and some of their friends might be doing their engine building a little bit more and comboing and chaining a little bit more, and they have to wait several turns before being able to take an action. So this is in response to games like Paladins or Terraforming Mars or Gaia Project and Terra Mystica, where there's a little bit more tension for the player that's dragging the round out longer. They can still do that, and players like to do that, but the player who's already passed gets some other benefits. They're just going to keep getting stronger and stronger leaning into the next round. And the other thing the tent does is it has that thing like Gaia Project or Terra Mystica, where there is an incentive to pass early too. It's not overpowered, but passing early means you get first dibs on the tile that you want. So that was something I'd like to see in more games, and I think it preserves tension nicely and engagement as well. But yeah, I will talk about the one of the core mechanics in the game. I think we've spoken about the dice mechanic in another video, but just briefly, you'll see that there's kind of like 4 layers, 4 areas that the dice can be on your board. That's just with the artwork, the dividing line between the hills and the horizon and the water and that sort of thing. So each round, all of your dice will level up. The dice that are in the bottom spot, they can't be used, and all of the top 3 spots they can be used. But the higher 2 levels give you some dice manipulation when you use dice from there. So if you roll poorly, you can just keep that dice around for a while, and then you'll be able to mitigate that bad luck and send it out as a higher value. As well as the system for basically upgrading white dice into specialist colors, the orange, charcoal, and blue. They do this kind of training, the study track as they level up, and then eventually they become a colored die with more abilities and effects. There are tons of ways of engine building in this game. If you like engine building, man, there's so many ways that you can explore building your engine and feeling stronger throughout the game. But the mechanic where we felt, Shem and I felt, that we really had a game on our hands here was this resource system. So you can see kind of to the right of where the dice are on the player board, there's these little tokens, these wooden discs that are screen printed that have different icons and different colors. These are 6 craftspeople that everyone has access to. And sort of their level represents that craftsperson's level of experience and expertise at their craft. So the higher they are, the better they are at their craft, essentially, but you're going to have to pay them more. So they're going to be worth more points at the end of the game, but they cost more because they're better at their craft. And so players are using coins to spend resources. They're paying their craftspeople. When their craftspeople are used, they move up a level, so they've got some work experience, but they flip over, so they're now inactive or exhausted, and they need to be refreshed. So players need to manage the state of their craftspeople, whether they're active or inactive, with different effects they can refresh them, and they also need to manage their coins and income. So it's a very thematic way of doing resources that we found works really well. And once you've moved all of your craftspeople up above the bottom step, then that tile flips over. You get a benefit. It slides up to the top, and everything slides down. And so the level can go from 1 all the way up to 10. Whereas if you get every craftsperson to the 10th level, which is a goal to push for that we haven't seen yet in testing, but maybe one of you will be able to do it, you'll get 6 points per craftsperson that's there.
Yeah, it's like a little conveyor belt of craftsmen. And then on the right hand side of the player board, we've got these workshop actions. You can see there's an orange die and some white dice over there. Here's where you place tiles you get from testing. So whenever you test your ship, or just the device as your ship moves along, often you're picking up a tile which you'll place into one of the 3 rows of your workshop on the right hand side of your board. And this is basically building out like an engine that you can run mostly once per turn. There are ways around that. But you kind of get to trigger all of these abilities. Sam's, says often like a wingspan kind of vibe where you kind of activate the entire row and do all these things in any order you choose, which is a lot of the engine building comes in that area as well, and customization of how you play the game. And there'll be things in there that you can kind of see if you look really closely. There's some craftspeople icons in those tiles as well, the 2 blue ones. You can pay your blacksmith to move your ship. You can pay your weaver to get a die, that kind of stuff. So lots of variation. There's something like 40 plus, 45 plus tiles that you could have where you can have access to throughout the games. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff going on there.
Yeah, and I do want to talk a little bit about the heavy thing. This is most likely, in my opinion, this is probably the most heavy Garphill game. This is something that we wanted to do. We wanted to make this game heavy. We think that this is the best version of the game being this heavy, all of these layers of interaction and engine building. But I don't think it's unintuitive. The iconography is actually quite consistent and clean, and maybe it's easier to teach than some games as well. This does not mean that we are only making games this heavy. We've had some comments online about people wanting us to design lighter games too, and we absolutely are and do that. I mean, look at Skara Brae, look at Shipwrights Redux. But for those who like heavy games, for those who like, games like Vital Lacerda's games, I hope that people will be able to talk about this game in that context, being able to be up there with the best, perhaps. I think this is we've done a really good job, if I could say, making a heavy game. And in future trilogies, it's not necessarily that we're going to make them this heavy, but it is something that we enjoy designing and making games this heavy because we like playing games of this weight as well.
Yeah, we like our brains to burn. But also, I guess it comes from playtesting so much that we want to make these games quite replayable, which means more depth, which often means more rules, and more hidden strategies and stuff. So, playing a light game or a medium weight game, 100 times in 6 months, you will start to wane on it a bit and lose interest. So we try and design games that we want to play 100 times, which means they're going to tailor towards our tastes, which is why the games that I often do on myself, like Skara Brae and Shipwrights, are often very resource heavy solo style games because that's what I love doing. I love puzzles. And the games that we co-design are going to be a lot of crunchy decisions, depth and layers and strategies. And then games that Sam's done with Zach or by himself often have a lot more interaction because Sam loves the play interaction at the table. So we just design games that we want to play, basically. And when Sam and I get together, we like playing these kind of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we totally appreciate if this isn't for you, if the heavy games aren't for you, or if the light games aren't for you. We love and appreciate all of your support, and you just go for whatever games resonate with you. And we're so thankful that there are people who have been with us on this journey, from the North Sea, going a little bit heavier into exploring some of these uncharted territories for us. So we have a question here, which we're about to answer, I think, talking about inventors. When can we play this on TTS?
Well, Sam, very soon.
So, as I mentioned earlier, the Garphill Discord is the place to be for all things Garphill. And right after this video, we are going to open up the Tabletop Simulator mod exclusively to people who are on our Discord server, and players will be able to get in there and play the game solo and learn it solo. We'll have the rulebook, which is not quite final yet, but the rulebook will be available, as well as a teaching video from myself. I only teach the multiplayer game, so you will have to read the rulebook for the solo mode. But just speaking about the solo mode, it is easier to run and lighter than most of our recent ones.
Yeah.
Would you say so?
Yeah, I really wanted to try use a similar system from Wayfarers and Scholars with the whole two-colored card system, but it just wasn't working. I tried adding like more cards and changing up things. It was just like, this doesn't work. This system does not work for this game. So made a whole entirely new different system that just uses two types of cards that you kind of build the deck for the AI each round, which creates some variability in what they're going to do. But it just seems to work. It's very simple. You flip a card and do a thing. Much simpler than most of our solo modes, but it seems to interact in a really good way. It scores well. So we'd love to get reports on people solo testing to like kind of where the bot is scoring, because that's the most important part, is getting those difficulties right. But also if there's any kind of weird edge cases, we like to just keep doing this weird action over and over again, which didn't benefit it. We want to hear about that stuff as well. But yeah. So that'll open up pretty soon. We will be jumping in with some multiplayer tests, and a bunch of our faithful Warrior playtesters are happy to help out and teach you the game, or at least be there to play the game with you after watching the teaching video. So in the past, we've done far more structured testing, or multiplayer testing, where we've scheduled kind of 2 times a week or 3 times a week. This time we're going to just be a bit more casual about it. We might just say, hey, I'm free for a game now if anyone wants to jump in. So and if you want to play a game, you can just ask, like, I'm free now, can someone show me the game, or can someone play the game with me? Hopefully that'll get you in on a game. But yeah, reading the rules or watching the video firsthand will help a lot, though, so someone doesn't have to teach you. But lastly, I think on the teaching subject, we have shown this game to a lot of friends who struggled with previous games because of the weight, and they've actually found this game quite easy to learn. There are a lot of upfront rules, like most of heavy games have, but I think the thematic ties in this game are really strong. So the concept of like, oh, I'm going to test, I'm going to publish, I'm going to build, that all makes sense why you're doing what you're doing. So it's easy to teach from that point of view. And I've lost my train of thought, but yeah, there you go. Cool. I think the last thing to discuss before we jump into any questions is just around the Kickstarter, the Saga box, expansions, and all that kind of stuff for the South. So the plan for this one will be likely a February or March Kickstarter. Probably launch towards the end of February, but we might push it into March if we have to for time. In previous trilogies, the last 2, we have done the Saga box, so Rune Saga and Tome Saga, at the same time as the 3rd game. We decided not to do that for this one, for a few reasons, but the main reason is that we wanted to do the expansions, or any expansions we have in mind for these games first, so that the Saga box can then accommodate those expansions in a really good way. You can still do that with, say, Tome Saga and Rune Saga. They work backwards, but we want to have a bit more information about the expansions first. But the other reason, which I'm kind of more excited about, is with each Saga box we're trying to do something new. So the Tome Saga had the co-op modes. That was kind of its unique thing. You could play the Saga system, that you saw in Rune Saga, as normal, but if you wanted to, you could also play these co-op modes. I would love to do for this Saga to do a solo campaign for the whole South. There will probably be some narrative text in there, some decision making for which path you take, that kind of thing. But it might be something like 6 chapters. The first 2 chapters might be play Wayfarers, then play Wayfarers with the expansion. But there'll be variation within how you set up the game based on your decisions and that kind of stuff. So we want more time to work on that, to make the Saga box like a really cool box and a cool product. but also to launch the expansions. So this could all change. But our current plan is that February, March 2025, so a year later after Inventors, we would do one last self Kickstarter, and that would be probably one expansion for each base game and the Saga box. So all four of those expansion products in one Kickstarter. Um, that means that you can just enjoy Inventors. Well, right now you can enjoy Scholars that just come out, for a good year and just play it at your leisure. Then you can enjoy Inventors when that comes out and play it, and then a year later you'll get this like extra pack of expansions and saga boxes and all that solo campaign and kind of stuff like that. So that's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot still to come, but I'm going to get into some of these questions now. Gino asked about Inventors. Is it rules heavy or is it more brain burny heavy? So Wayfarers, for example, was quite rules heavy. It was a game that we really wanted to feel super sandboxy for players, that they could experiment with many different paths. They could go for a full land strategy or space strategy or working on their upgrade tiles. And so each game, there was quite a lot of ways to express yourself creatively. And Scholars is a lot more of a contained system that is super crunchy and where there's a lot of player interaction with the shared infrastructure. And Inventors, to me, feels like a merging of the two, where there is all that interaction in the shared infrastructure of Scholars, but there is a lot of room to express yourself. And so there's a lot of different ways you can play the game. We could have the craftsperson strat or the tiles strat or the invent strat. There's a lot of different pathways that you can explore. So you're not going to see it all in 1, 2, or 3 plays. So to answer that question, it's probably both rules heavy and brain burny heavy, because you have to kind of direct yourself a little bit. We don't necessarily give players too much direction because we want them to find their way and express themselves creatively. Another question here from Edward. I'll give this one to Shem. Are there any townsfolk cards or characters in Inventors?
So there are 48 device cards. They are mostly the only cards in the game. There's a few setup cards and AI cards and stuff like that. But no, there's no. This is one thing that we actually didn't concern us, but we were conscious of it when we were making the game early on. But this game has no people in the game. Like, it's quite rare for us. We often always have character cards that that do things. So this one's much more like about the things you're making. But I will say that we are playing around with expansion ideas already, and if Inventors gets an expansion, it will likely have characters in it. More likely that you'll be a character with a certain power or something. But that's all early days. But yeah, it's different for us in that point of view for sure.
To answer Monica's question, but not give many details, yes, we have started thinking about game titles and themes for the East trilogy. And that's all we'll say about the East.
It's still a long way off.
Yeah. So will Redux, I think this is talking about shipwrights, be offered with future Kickstarters even though it was a North Sea game?
No. We try and the add-ons just get crazy with for logistical reasons, like providing products that might not be available in certain regions of the world. It means we might have to reprint them or move stock around, which just costs more money. So we try and keep all our Kickstarters contained to the trilogy or the world they're from. So no, that will. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on it. Pretty sure that will be the last North Sea Kickstarter. Not to say we wouldn't do more products. I don't think we will, but if we did, I think we're more likely just to go straight to retail. But there's no plans for that at this point anyway. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So is there more Miko art in Inventors than what we see here?
There's a lot of those device cards. So you can see there's like a door, there's some glasses, there's a chair. It's always wacky things. There's, I think, 18 device boards, which they have that kind of sketch of something on a piece of paper that you see. They're just kind of describing the adjective of the board. But no, we commissioned a bunch of character art for the box mostly. So you can see there's 2 characters inside the box there. But we did that kind of foreshadowing or foreknowing that we'd probably do an expansion that would require characters. So there will be more art to come. But what you see here is basically the game. It's very what's the word, like it's quite contained. There's not much hidden in the game. So while you are drawing cards, they're not like the be all end all of your whole game. Like if you draw the right card at the right time, it doesn't really make much difference.
Yeah.
It's more about the state of the board, what's going on there. So that's where the game's been played, really.
Closer to perfect information, but not fully.
Yeah.
So a few questions about the expansions. We have started working on them. We have played them. I'm not going to say anything really more about how they play out. But will they further complicate the games, or will they just add additional components for variety, such as additional tiles and Wayfarers?
I think Wayfarers doesn't add too many rules. So we'll just say we have basically got the kind of working expansion for Wayfarers. It still needs a lot of development and art and stuff to finish it off. We have a very good, cool concept for Scholars, but we need to really dive back into that ASAM pretty soon. And then Inventors, we know the concept works. It's just a matter of like lots of testing and adjusting stuff. So for Wayfarers, I'd say it doesn't add too many rules to the game. It just adds a bit more going on, more options.
And again, more paths, more ways to express yourself. We really want Wayfarers to be sandboxy. So for some people, it will fully resonate with them, and others, it will be too open. But I
think it'll be the expansion that fans of Wayfarers want. So
yeah, that's right.
Scholars, like that was an interesting one for Scholars because we find that game is very confined and like Paladins, like it's a system that works and it's hard to plug into. But we do have a thing that kind of works that we're running with, which I think it adds a little bit more rules, but not heaps. It's a fairly light expansion, I think. And the stuff we have planned for Inventors wouldn't actually be adding much at all, just what you have to focus on as a player. So, yeah.
And if I can give a little plug for Scholars, if you haven't played it yet, please check it out. We're super proud of this game. It's only come out recently, and I think it's really worth checking out. So do we have any other questions here? I'm just checking, just catching up with some of the chat. What do the dice do in Inventors? They are used for taking actions on your player board. That's an easy answer to that. Will any of the South games eventually get a playmat? Maybe two more questions and then we'll call it.
I think if we expand the main board of Scholars with an expansion, then that might get a playmat, much like we did for Architects and Raiders. Like, I mean, I like using playmats, but they are a nightmare to produce and to ship around the world. They're just big and annoying to ship. But I know they're amazing to use because cards just lift off them so easily. They do lose a lot of detail, it's the downside. But also just the ease of having one big thing rather than lots of boards is also good. So if we do expand the board for Scholars, we'll likely do a playmat. Wayfarers wouldn't work because it's modular boards. You'd have to have like six different playmats for variety. And then Inventors, I don't think so. Who knows? But I don't think so. The board looks amazing, and you want those colors to pop as well. Everything feel consistent.
Cool. So just two more questions I see here. So one from D was asking about what the dice actually represent in Inventors, and so the white ones are kind of just used for taking actions and simple. I guess they're people of some form or another. But the colored ones are specialists in different areas. So we've got a merchant is the blue one who has an affinity for a particular type of action, and we've got the scientist is the orange one. And then the charcoal one is kind of like a builder or a skilled artisan. So there is a little bit of theme to these characters, and that kind of plays out in the actions that they're good at. And then I will just say the final question was from Scott about BGA. Any plans for making more of your games available there? We've loved having our games on BGA. We've got Hadrian's Wall and Architects, the West Kingdom available there.
You can say the other one.
Just wait patiently. You might see something more.
There is more coming, yeah. But they take a long time to make and to develop. There is one more question. Just it's come a few times that I would say. What was it? About the 2-player experience for Inventors.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 2-player was great. We love playing 2-player. We have added in a dummy player just so there's some more competition for the guilds and things. But it's not an AI to run. It's just at the start of each of the 4 rounds or 3 rounds. If you play a 3 round game, you flip a card, you move some things, you're done. That's it. So it's very simple, but it adds a bit more competition rather than just always being, oh, I'm first, you're second. There's a fight for second place with the dummy player now and then. So, yeah. And just to reiterate, the Kickstarter will likely be February, March next year, and we'll have scholars and wafers available. We'll have metal coins. We'll have old promos available for those games as well, and new promos for this game, I suppose. We should get on that. Cool.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, thank you so much to all of you. Your support is amazing.
Yeah.
This job, this hobby that we do is such a dream, and we're so pleased that our games are resonating with you. So yeah, we don't take your support for granted. You're amazing, and just having over 200 of you here in this community chatting with us right now has been really awesome. A bunch of great people. So thank you so much. We appreciate you a lot.
Ditto. Yeah, so true. We do really appreciate it. And we love just getting excited for these games with you as well, because it's one thing to make something that you enjoy, but then to see other people enjoying it as well, it's like so satisfying. So we're just going to keep doing it if we can keep doing it. We love playing games first and foremost, and love making games as well. So thank you all for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to post stuff on BGG. We're going to put this stuff on our Discord server, all the cover art and everything, so you'll be able to see that soon. But thank you for tuning in, and for those who come back and watch later, thank you as well. All right, signing off. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.